Her father-in-law tried to marry her off again. Imagine being forced into a second marriage by the man who should have protected you. Zahara was left with no choice but to fight back against betrayal, cruelty, and tradition. What happened next will shock you. Stay tuned to discover the unimaginable twist that changed everything. Zahara was only 19 when her life changed forever. She met Kembu, a kind and gentle schoolteacher, at the village market. He was drawn to her quiet strength and respectful nature. Zahara came from a humble home, but her beauty and wisdom stood out. She didn't chase men or wear flashy clothes. She was simple, but graceful. Kembu, the only son of the powerful Chief Kalogo, didn't care about status. He saw something real in Zahara. He visited her often, helped carry her basket, and made her laugh. Soon, love grew between them. When Kembu told his father he wanted to marry Zahara, Kalogo was furious. The chief had dreams of his son marrying into wealth and power. He had already spoken to a senator about marrying Kembu to his daughter. That union would bring influence, cattle, and political power to their family. But Kembu stood firm. "I love Zahara," he said, "not for what she has, but for who she is." Kalogo tried to force him to change his mind, but Kembu refused. Eventually, Kalogo gave in, but not from the heart. He allowed the marriage only to avoid public embarrassment. People in the village were already talking. If the chief blocked the marriage, it would seem like he was controlling his son's life. Kalogo didn't want to lose face, so he pretended to bless the union. He attended the ceremony, but his smile was fake. Behind his eyes was cold fire. He didn't forget, and he didn't forgive. The wedding itself was small. There were no big feasts or loud drums, just close family, neighbors, and simple food. Zahara wore a dress sewn by her aunt. Kembu looked at her like she was the queen of the world. That day, they made promises to each other with no gold, no riches, just love. People said the two were perfect together. The village girls admired Zahara, and the boys respected Kembu. For a while, everything was peaceful. Zahara moved into the family compound, where Kalogo also lived. Kembu tried to protect her from his father's silent stares and cold presence. They focused on building a future. Kembu kept teaching. Zahara helped village women with small tasks, and they dreamed of having children. But even as joy grew between them, Kalogo's resentment grew stronger. In his eyes, Zahara had stolen his son and shattered his plans. He watched their happiness like a shadow lurking behind a closed door. He waited for his chance to strike, and deep inside, he whispered to himself, "One day, I will take back control." But no one saw what was coming. Not even Zahara, who believed she had finally found peace. Not even Kembu, who thought his father had accepted their love. The seeds of betrayal were already planted, and soon they would grow into something no one expected. 6 months into their quiet and happy marriage, Zahara's world collapsed. Kembu had gone to a nearby town for a teacher's seminar. He promised to return before nightfall. Zahara waited with food ready and hope in her heart, but he never came back. News came the next morning. His bus had crashed on a winding hill road. There were few survivors. Kembu wasn't one of them. Zahara fainted upon hearing it. Her cries echoed through Ondari village. Her husband, her best friend, her protector, gone in an instant. The funeral was rushed as tradition demanded. People came, cried, then returned to their lives. But Zahara couldn't move on. She stopped smiling. She barely ate. Her eyes stayed fixed on the hut they once shared. Every corner of the compound reminded her of Kembu, his laughter, his voice, his dreams. The pain was unbearable, yet she stayed silent, grieving alone in a house that felt colder each day. But just 7 days after the burial, Chief Kalogo changed. The man who had always watched Zahara with quiet disdain suddenly started looking at her differently. His voice softened when he spoke to her. His eyes held something unreadable, something that made Zahara uneasy. Then one evening, as the sun dipped low, Kalogo sent a message through one of the houseboys. Zahara was to come to his hut, alone. She went, unsure of what to expect. Her legs shook as she stepped inside. The room was quiet, filled with the scent of burning herbs. Kalogo sat alone, no guards, no elders. He motioned for her to sit. Zahara lowered herself to the mat, her heart pounding. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then slowly, with a fake gentleness in his voice, Kalogo spoke. "You are still young, Zahara," he said. "It is not good for a woman like you to be alone." Zahara didn't respond. She was confused, anxious, waiting for him to explain. Then he leaned forward, and what he said next made her skin crawl. "I will arrange a new marriage for you," he said. "Someone powerful, Someone who can protect you. Zahara's chest tightened. She shook her head. I'm not ready, she whispered. Kembu just died. Kalogo smiled thinly. Kembu is gone. Life must go on. But Zahara could see it now. This wasn't kindness. This wasn't about her well-being. This was control. Kalogo had never accepted her. And now that Kembu was gone, he saw her as a burden, or worse, an asset to trade. She stood up, trembling. I need time, she said, then walked out without waiting for permission. Behind her, Kalogo's eyes darkened. His real plans had just begun, and Zahara had no idea how far he was willing to go to bend her to his will. Zahara sat across from Chief Kalogo, her eyes still heavy from days of mourning. The wound of Kembu's death was fresh, her heart barely able to beat without breaking. Yet here she was, summoned once again to Kalogo's hut. The room felt colder this time, and his face wore no warmth. Then he spoke, his tone firm and dry. Zahara, you are still young. You can't remain a widow. According to Ondari custom, I must marry you to another man, someone of my choosing. Zahara blinked in disbelief. Her mind couldn't process what she'd just heard. Sir, she said softly, I need time. Time to mourn. Kalogo chuckled, but there was no humor in it. Then mourn, he said. But mourn as the wife of my friend, Jabiri. He's wealthy, respected, and has offered 20 goats for you. Zahara's stomach turned. 20 goats. That's what she was worth now? A trade. Her voice shook, but her words were sharp. What? I am not a slave. I will not remarry like cattle. Kalogo's face twisted in rage. He slammed his carved walking stick hard on the floor. The sound echoed like thunder through the hut. You will, he barked. You live under my roof. I fed you. I clothed you. I buried my son. Now you will repay me. Zahara stared at him, stunned. Was this the same man who stood beside her at the wedding? The man who acted like he had accepted her? Now, he saw her as a debt to be collected, a body to be traded for goats and pride. She stood slowly, gripping her wrapper tightly around her. With all respect, Chief, she said, I owe you nothing. I loved your son. I mourn him every night, but I am not property. You can't sell me. Kalogo leaned forward, his voice low and threatening. You defy me, and you will be banished. You will leave this house with nothing but your shadow. No food, no roof, no name. The village will turn their back on you. Zahara's hands trembled, but she did not look away. Then so be it, she whispered. She turned and walked out of the hut, heart racing, unsure where she'd go, what she'd eat, or who would help her. But one thing was clear. She would not be sold like a goat. Not even by a chief, not even by her father-in-law. Behind her, Kalogo's eyes burned with anger. His plan had been simple. Marry her off quickly, gain favor with his powerful friend Jabiri, and erase her presence from his home. But Zahara had just embarrassed him, challenged his authority, and now she had unknowingly made herself his enemy. That night, Zahara sat in silence, staring at the few belongings she had. Her heart was pounding, but her decision was firm. She could not stay under the same roof with a man who saw her as a transaction. She wrapped her clothes in a worn cloth, gathered a small basket of dried food, and stepped out quietly. The sky was dark, and the village dogs barked as she passed, but Zahara didn't look back. Her destination was the tiny hut her late mother had left behind, on the far edge of Ondari village. The hut was old, with cracked walls and a leaking roof, but it was hers. For the first time since Kembu's death, Zahara felt like she could breathe. She lit a small fire and sat on the floor, her knees pulled to her chest. Alone, but free. By morning, the village buzzed with whispers. Word spread quickly. Zahara had left Chief Kalogo's house, on her own, without permission. Some women looked at her with awe, whispering behind their wrappers, "She's bold. She has fire in her soul." Others prayed for her safety, but many men scoffed. "She won't last," they laughed. "Let her taste hunger. She'll come crawling back." Chief Kalogo heard it all. The more he listened, the more his pride burned. How could a mere widow, a girl with no name, no wealth, stand against him, the great chief of Ondari? She had humiliated him in front of the village, refused a wealthy suitor, walked out of his home, alone. No woman had dared such a thing before. Kalogo paced back and forth in his compound, anger steaming from his nose. His advisors told him to forget her, but Kalogo couldn't. To him, Zahara's refusal wasn't just disobedience, it was a threat. If one woman could say no, others might follow. What kind of example was she setting? So he began to plot again, quietly, carefully. This time, he wouldn't ask. He would act. He sent men into the village to watch her. He whispered into the ears of elders, planting lies about her. She's rebellious, he said. She's dangerous. His goal was simple: break Zahara's name, ruin her reputation, and force her back into the box he built. But Zahara didn't flinch. She fetched her own water, cooked her own meals, sat outside each evening and watched the stars, her heart still aching, but her spirit unshaken. She knew she had few allies, no wealth, no protection, but she also knew she had her dignity, and she would never trade it, not for goats, not for status, and definitely not for fear. Zahara was sweeping the front of her small hut when a young boy from the village ran up and handed her a folded paper. Confused, she opened it. Her hands trembled as she read the words. Her eyes widened in disbelief. The letter stated that she, Zahara, was now legally married to Jabiri, a man she had never accepted, a man she had firmly rejected. It claimed her consent had been given, that the bride price had been paid again, and that 2 respected elders had witnessed the union. Her blood boiled. She rushed into the hut and sat down, reading the letter again and again. No part of it made sense. She hadn't signed anything. She hadn't spoken to anyone. Who could do this? Only one name came to her mind: Chief Kalogo. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, Kalogo sat in his compound with Jabiri, both men smiling as if they had just sealed a perfect business deal. Jabiri, a wealthy merchant twice Zahara's age, counted the remaining bags of maize and handed over a carved wooden chest filled with coins and gold trinkets. Kalogo grinned and nodded. She will have no choice now, he said. It's already done. To make it all seem official, Kalogo had bribed 2 elders who stamped the fake documents with the village seal. They even wrote false witness statements claiming Zahara had agreed to the union. All the paperwork looked flawless. No one would suspect a thing, except Zahara. When Zahara stormed into the village council the next morning, the elders acted confused. But child, your marriage is already registered. You accepted Jabiri, did you not? Zahara's voice shook. I never agreed. I never signed anything. This is a lie. But they ignored her cries. Kalogo had already gotten to them. She left with fire in her eyes. People in the market started whispering. Did you hear? They married her off again, in secret. Some believed it, some didn't. But Zahara knew one thing. She wasn't going to stay silent. She returned to her hut and tore the letter in half, then burned it. The flames danced in her eyes as she whispered, I am not yours to sell. Her anger turned into determination. If they could forge papers, she could find the truth. If they wanted to ruin her name, she would clear it. What Kalogo didn't know was that Zahara had learned to read and write better than most in the village. Kembu had taught her before he died. She would fight back, not with violence, but with truth, and she would not fight alone. Her voice, small as it was, had started to stir something in the hearts of the people. Kalogo thought he had silenced her with fake papers and bribes, but instead he had awakened a fire that could not be put out. And this time, Zahara would not just defend her name, she would make them regret ever thinking she was powerless. The sun burned hot over the village square as drums echoed and dancers twirled. People gathered from every corner of Ondari, drawn by the noise and free drinks. A large canopy stood in the center, decorated with bright cloth and palm leaves. At its heart stood Jabiri, grinning in a long red robe, his chest puffed out with pride. Next to him was Chief Kalogo, smiling like a man who had just conquered something. Whispers spread quickly. What's happening? Is this a wedding? Whose wedding? Then someone shouted, It's Zahara and Jabiri. Shock rippled through the crowd. Zahara had no idea what was going on until 2 of Kalogo's guards banged on her door. You are needed at the square, one growled. Now! Zahara hesitated, but they grabbed her arms and forced her to come. She tried to resist, but the grip was too tight. When she reached the square and saw the setup, her heart dropped. Music blasted. Children danced. Old men cheered and lifted cups of palm wine. But all Zahara saw was betrayal. She looked at Jabiri and then at Kalogo. What is this? She asked, her voice trembling. Kalogo walked toward her calmly. It's your wedding. The village will witness it now. Zahara stepped back. Number I never agreed to this. I'm not part of this madness. She turned to leave, but the guards moved fast, blocking her path. The crowd froze. Let me go, she screamed, twisting her body. I said no! Kalogo stepped forward, his voice cold. The papers are signed. You belong to Jabiri now. Act like a wife. Gasps erupted from the crowd. Zahara's face flushed with anger. She tried to push past the guards again, but one shoved her back roughly. Suddenly, someone in the crowd raised a phone, then another, then another. Eyes widened, fingers hit the record button. Someone whispered, "She's being forced." Look, the moment was being captured. Every scream, every word, every shove. Zahara saw the phones. She raised her voice louder. "This is wrong. I never agreed to marry Jabiri. These men forged everything." Kalogo's smile vanished. He waved his hand to the musicians, who awkwardly stopped playing. The crowd grew tense. Murmurs replaced laughter. "Is this real? She looks terrified. This isn't a wedding. It's a trap." One elder walked away quietly, then another. The air changed. Zahara stood in the center, breathing hard. "I will not be silenced. I am not for sale." A woman from the crowd stepped forward and offered Zahara her hand. Another followed, then another. The guards looked confused. Kalogo's voice cracked. "This is a family matter. Go home." But no one moved. The ceremony had turned into a protest, and the video, still being recorded, was already on its way to the outside world. That night, while the village slept under the heavy silence of shame, Zahara slipped out through the back of her late mother's hut. Her heart pounded with every step, but she didn't stop. She carried only a small bag and the clothes on her back. Her eyes burned with tears, but her spirit burned stronger. She wasn't going to let Kalogo ruin her life. By dawn, Zahara reached the dusty road that led to Baruma city. A kind truck driver gave her a lift. The ride was quiet, but her mind raced. Images from the forced wedding flashed in her head. The guards, the shouting, the laughter that had turned to silence, and the phones that had recorded it all. That video, it was her weapon now. Baruma city bustled with noise and movement. It was nothing like Ondari. Zahara had never felt so small and so free at the same time. She found her way to her cousin Safina's apartment, a tiny flat above a printing shop. Safina, surprised to see her at first, pulled her into a tight hug without a word. Zahara broke down in her arms. Once Zahara explained everything, Safina stared at her in disbelief. "They tried to marry you off, publicly, without your consent?" Zahara nodded. "And they made it look legal. But I have proof." She showed her the video, still on her phone. Safina worked as a junior editor at a growing media house. That very night, she took Zahara to the studio. It was small, only 2 rooms and some borrowed equipment, but it had internet, cameras, and a voice that could echo far beyond their town. "I'm done running," Zahara said, standing in front of the camera. "Let the world see what they did." Safina hit record. Zahara spoke clearly and with courage. She told her story from beginning to end. The love, the loss, the betrayal. She didn't cry. Her voice didn't even shake. She ended with a simple line. "I am not cattle. I am not a slave. I am a woman, and I have a voice." The next morning, the video was uploaded to every platform Safina knew. Within hours, it started spreading. People began sharing it, commenting, tagging others. Women from across the country sent messages of support. Men expressed shock. Activists took interest. Even local journalists started calling the media house, asking for interviews. In just one day, Zahara's name was everywhere. And back in Ondari, Chief Kalogo's compound grew quiet, very quiet. The video spread like wildfire. In just a few hours, it was everywhere. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, even on national news platforms. Headlines popped up one after another. Young widow forced into marriage by influential chief. Ondari woman speaks out. "I am not property." Leaked video exposes forced marriage ceremony. The footage from the crowd showed everything. Zahara's screams, Kalogo's threats, the guards blocking her, and the celebration happening without her will. People were outraged. Social media exploded. Thousands shared the video, tagging human rights organizations, legal groups, and journalists. Zahara's name trended for 3 days. Influential women, politicians, and celebrities reposted her story, calling for justice. The entire nation watched as the truth unfolded. Soon, Baruma's biggest media stations picked up the story. Activists arrived at Zahara's cousin's house, offering help. A top human rights lawyer volunteered to represent her for free. "We won't let them bury your voice," she said. Zahara handed over every document she had, the fake marriage certificate, the second bride price list, everything. The lawyer sent it to experts who quickly proved it was forged. Her signature didn't match. The ink wasn't even from the village registrar's pen. It was a sham. Meanwhile, back in Ondari, Chief Kalogo was losing control. At first, he pretended nothing was wrong. "This is our tradition," he told local journalists. "A widow must be remarried to protect her." But the people weren't buying it anymore. The same crowd that once laughed during Zahara's forced wedding now watched in shame as camera crews surrounded Kalogo's compound. Reporters knocked. Activists shouted. Lawyers came with documents. Zahara returned to Ondari, not in secret, but with media vans behind her. She stood before the chief's gates, calm and composed. When questioned by the media, Kalogo tried to defend himself. "This girl is my daughter-in-law. I took care of her. I married her off with good intentions." But Zahara stepped forward. "Good intentions don't need forged documents," she said. Then she held up a folder, proof from legal experts showing how the signature on the marriage form was faked, how the bride price records had been edited, how the elders who signed it had been bribed. Everything unraveled. The elders, now under pressure, confessed on camera. They admitted they never spoke to Zahara, that Kalogo had paid them a bag of maize and 5,000 naira each. Jabiri, the man she was forced to marry, denied everything at first, until video clips showed him smiling beside Kalogo at the fake wedding. The law took over. Lawyers filed charges. Women's groups demanded Kalogo's removal as chief. His power started crumbling. His own people began turning against him. The village that once laughed at Zahara now looked at her with awe. Zahara's voice, once ignored, had become louder than the chief's. And all it took was one hidden camera, the truth, and the power of social media. The courtroom was packed. Reporters filled the back rows, cameras rolling. Activists, villagers, and curious onlookers waited in silence. Zahara entered, dressed in a simple blue gown, her head held high. She didn't look broken anymore. She looked strong, unshaken. She took her place beside her lawyer and faced the judge without fear. On the other side of the courtroom, Chief Kalogo sat stiffly. The once proud leader now looked small and nervous. His hands trembled slightly. Jabiri, seated beside him, avoided eye contact with everyone. Sweat dripped from his forehead. The air was thick with tension. As the trial began, Zahara's lawyer presented all the evidence: the fake documents, the viral video, the recorded confession from the bribed elders, an expert analysis of the forged signature. Each piece of evidence hit like a hammer. Kalogo's defense tried to argue tradition, but the judge wasn't swayed. "Tradition," the judge said, "does not mean lawlessness. A widow is not property." Witnesses were called. The elders who once sided with Kalogo now testified against him. They admitted they were paid to lie. Jabari's silence spoke volumes. When asked if he knew Zahara had not consented to the marriage, he simply bowed his head. That was answer enough. Zahara took the stand. Her voice was steady. She told the court about her husband's death, the night Kalogo demanded she remarry, and how she was forced into a fake ceremony. She didn't cry. She didn't shake. Every word she spoke carried weight. The courtroom listened to her like she was a queen. Finally, the judge stood and read the verdict. "Chief Kalogo, for the crimes of forced marriage, forgery, abuse of power, and emotional harm, this court sentences you to 15 years in prison." The courtroom gasped. Murmurs broke out. Some cheered. Others clapped quietly. Jabiri was fined heavily and barred from holding any public office again. His reputation, once respected, was destroyed in minutes. Kalogo tried to speak, but the guards were already leading him away in handcuffs. For the first time in his life, he had no power, no voice, no crown. Zahara sat down and let out a long breath. Tears rolled down her cheeks, but they were not from sadness. They were from relief, from freedom. Justice had finally found her. She had won, not just for herself, but for every woman who had ever been silenced. Outside the court, people gathered. Supporters hugged her. Strangers thanked her. Journalists pushed forward for interviews. But Zahara only said one thing: "This was never just about me. This was about every woman told to stay silent. We are not property. We are people." That moment was broadcast across the nation. Zahara's name became a symbol of courage. Her face filled newspapers and television screens. The trial didn't just punish a corrupt chief, it sparked a movement. People began questioning old customs, demanding better protection for widows and women's rights. The courtroom verdict had shaken the nation, and Zahara had become the voice of change. Months after the trial, Zahara's life transformed. What began as a personal battle for freedom turned into a movement that empowered countless women. With the support of activists, lawyers, and ordinary people, Zahara founded the Widow's Shield Initiative, an NGO dedicated to supporting women who were forced into second marriages. Her organization offered legal aid, counseling, and a platform for women to share their stories without fear. Zahara traveled across the country, speaking at conferences, schools, and community events. She became a symbol of strength, resilience, and justice. Zahara's voice grew louder with every passing day. She became a beacon of hope for those silenced by tradition and control. Women who once feared their voices would be ignored now found courage in her example. Zahara never let go of the pain of her past, but she turned it into fuel to fight for others. She created safe spaces where women could speak up without judgment. Her work was recognized internationally, and she became a sought-after speaker, inspiring global movements for women's rights. In contrast, Chief Kalogo's life had crumbled. The man who once commanded respect and fear now sat behind prison bars. His title as chief was stripped from him, his wealth dissolved into nothing. The village that had once bowed to him now whispered his name with disdain. Kalogo became a forgotten figure, a cautionary tale of how pride and greed can bring even the most powerful to their knees. He had underestimated Zahara, thinking she would be just another widow to control. Instead, she became the voice of change, and in doing so, destroyed everything he had built. Zahara's rise was not just a personal victory, it was a victory for all the women who had been oppressed, ignored, and treated as property. Kalogo's fall was a reminder that no one is untouchable, and that even those who hold the most power can be brought down by the courage of one determined person. Zahara's story spread beyond her village. It was told in schools, shared on social media, and discussed in political circles. She became a symbol of what happens when a woman refuses to accept injustice. People who had once whispered about her now hailed her as a leader. Her name became synonymous with courage, change, and the power of standing up for what is right. As for Kalogo, his name became a byword for tyranny. He spent his days behind bars, his once proud legacy shattered. The man who thought he could control Zahara had only proven her strength and resilience. Zahara showed the world that when women rise, injustice falls. The world had seen her fight, and now they would see her lead. Never again would anyone underestimate the power of a woman's voice. Zahara had proven that even in silence, strength could be found. She had risen, and in doing so, she had made history. If Zahara's story moved you, inspired you, or opened your eyes to the power of resilience, don't let it end here. Like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to our channel for more empowering stories. Together, we can spread the message that no woman should ever be silent. Thank you for watching, for supporting these voices, and for being part of a community that stands for justice. Let's keep fighting for what's right. Your voice matters.